Welcome to the July 24th meeting of the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee. Before I do the roll call, I'll just fill us in a little bit. We had scheduled this meeting to have a review with DPW of energy efficiency programs in our buildings. That had to be rescheduled, and in the shuffle with vacations, Peter Rice asked, could we put that off till September so that the city's energy consultants could prepare a little better and give us a comprehensive overview. But I looked at all of our activity and I thought we should at least take 45 minutes or an hour to go over all that is underway, because there's a lot of programs at work that are happening. Some exciting as they've followed through on the alternative energy solutions for the wastewater treatments plants, and Herb can fill us in on that. We had the Solar for All event at City Hall, I'm sorry, at the library. And we've got the Seacoast Green Challenge getting ready to launch as well. So it's not a decision-making meeting tonight, but it's a meeting where we can at least stay informed and check up on everything. So roll call. Ben D'Antonio.
Present.
And Kevin Charette.
Present.
And Peter Somsich.
Present.
And Herb Lloyd.
Present.
And do we have anybody on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Tracy, I know, has COVID. Betsy has a sick child, so we lose their wisdom and guidance. And I'm John Tabor, I'm a city councilor, and Councilor Cook we're both the city council representatives. Has everyone had a chance to look at the June minutes? Any changes, deletions, additions, amendations? Wholesale revisions?
Like a motion to approve the
Okay,
minutes of
I'll second that.
June 5th.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. First up, very good news for all of our residents. The Community Power Coalition new rates came out. And we attached the press release in your packet. But I guess the short version of the story is rates always go up in the winter, and we're getting summer rates all winter. So it's a great savings, 17–18% below the Eversource default rate. And I think what's exciting is that Granite Plus and Clean 50, two of our opt-up renewable options, are lower than Eversource. So one of our goals was to see if we could induce people to go to the cleaner options, and the rate structure certainly makes that possible.
Counselor, I have a stack of rate cards that were printed out by, I don't know if Stephanie or Monty put it together, but I'll go grab it.
Oh, great.
I meant to bring it down.
Just making an observation. Since I've been off the board, I'm not privy to this, but I'm pretty sure. The co-op now is kind of part of the mix because there's communities that are in the co-op territory. So kind of the competition over the first year was the three investor-owned utilities. And the goal was really to beat whatever the lowest was. And last time Eversource had kind of an artificially low rate because they had an adjustment. It was legitimate, but it was it was artificially low because of an adjustment they made, and it was larger than a typical adjustment. So that they set the bar last time. And this time it's now that the co-op is in the mix, you can see, the co-op's rate was 8.64 and community power is 8.6. So, it appears that, they're kind of just undercutting the co-op by a hair to continue the objective of being lower than any of the other delivery companies in the state. And, one of the things that may occur is, the co-op has a procurement process that's similar to community power in terms of they're not just going out twice a year to procure and whatever the market is at that point in time, they're procuring more like community power and vice versa. So my assumption may be that in the future, they may be kind of setting the low bar period to period, which is not a bad thing.
Right.
If community power can continue to, to beat it, you can just see at 8.6, we're substantially below the investor-owned utilities in the state that are all mid to high tens.
Right.
So, and my guess is community power is not trying to beat the investor-owned utilities by 2 cents. If the lowest was 10.4, I would assume we would have been 10.3 for community power. But I think they're just, this time around, the co-op set the low bar. That's just my
Yeah,
amateur observation.
Thank you.
yeah, and it's interesting, the co-op historically has always managed to be a little lower because it's a nonprofit and because they do portfolio buy.
Right, that's the reason, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
I don't know if these were sent to us by,
They must have been sent to us. by- Community Power.
or it seems
Yeah.
like it, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you can see our Clean 50 and Granite Plus below Eversource is 10.4. This is great. Any questions about the latest rates? It's all good news. And again, thanks to everybody on this committee for all the work we did to get our program launched on the double time as we did last June. So we've had more cumulative benefit as we were part of wave 1 or the 1.5, I guess. So,
And just one other thing, if you get any questions from, is the headline in I mentioned to you folks, the headline in Seacoast Online or whatever it's called, said that rates were going down. Community for Portsmouth, and that's not the case. They're going up. But if you read into the article, it says they're lower than Eversource, but the headline said community power rates are going down, which was not accurate. So if you get any questions, it's a great rate, but the headline was whatever.
yeah, because we're
Inaccurate.
currently 8.3.
Yeah, rates are going up 4 or 5%, not down.
And we supply a headline, which.
They don't, yeah. So
This
just
is not-
in the spirit of accuracy, that headline was not correct.
The Eversource delivery rates going up too. I think that that's something that's important for everyone to remember. So we might end up with some questions around, if the rates are low, why is my pricing going up? And it's the delivery rate.
Yeah.
I think they have filed, but I don't think it's been approved yet.
Hasn't been approved.
Yeah, I got the notice in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they were filing for
There we go.
increase. And they haven't had an increase, I think, since like 2019, I believe.
Well, yeah, and they want to make a lot of infrastructure investments, or so they say.
I think the investments have already been made and it's just
Trying to
the
recover.
chickens coming home to roost to pay for it. That's
Well, but it makes sense too, that the cost of everything for the power companies is going, labor is going up and.
yeah, and the letter they sent out, it's just everything now with inflation, but the letter that I said that the cost of a utility pole is up 30%, the cost of a transformer is up 130%. Distribution wire is up 50%. So, you know, that's just some of the cost of doing business. Plus, they've made a lot of investment
Yeah,
on the grid. And so it's I don't know what the percentage increase is gonna be, but I suspect we'll get something
Yep.
from the PUC.
And they're probably more demand for transformers. and wires everywhere.
Yeah, but you know,
Steady.
where's the innovation? Like, where are the improvements and I mean, poles, come on, a pole is a pole.
No, they're just saying the basic, I'm
Well,
just reading their letter here. but
Yeah,
it said-
I know, I'm saying,
But
but,
it said
but
since
you know,
2019, they've invested seven hundred and
yeah,
sixty-five
no,
million.
I get the
the
point, but what I'm
distribution
saying
system.
is, you know, this is a technology company essentially. It's low
Yeah.
technology in general, but
Yeah.
basically technology improvements are supposed to reduce cost, improve cost, improve delivery. And if all we're saying is everything is just going up because everything's going up, and in the meantime, wires, for example, there are better wires out there than the ones they have now, much better. Wires that can handle twice as much electricity, for example. But do we hear anything about that they we're starting to upgrade our grid in that sense?
I
Because that's what they were gonna make, they're making.
I
the pitch-
suspect if you had somebody in the room from the company, they would be
Yes.
able to point to a bunch of stuff that they're doing.
Well, that was a big deal.
From a
Grid
tech-
modernization was supposed to be happening, you know, and that should.
I don't know.
No, well, all we control is the supply,
That's right. That's right.
so. Other questions, comments on the good news on the rates? It's always nice to pass that along. I thought Stephanie, you were great to put in the press release.
Yeah.
You don't
great.
have to do anything to get the advantage of this.
Yeah, I mean, we're in our fourth rate period now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we were at like 22 cents, 24 cents
Yeah,
a year and a half ago.
yes,
Mm, yeah.
hard to believe. In your packets, we also gave you a letter from Joe Calderola. Joe was on the city council years ago. And he wrote a lengthy letter.
Mhm.
Really, I think if you boil it down to what he's asking, if I pay an extra $28 a month for Clean 100,
Mhm.
how much carbon am I saving? And he points out that he has solar panels. And if we're getting to the renewable goals of these different options by renewable energy certificates, he doesn't understand how that works because the RECs that he gets as a solar provider are very small. And how could they make a big difference? So it was a good letter. It was good questions.
Mhm.
And I gave you some of the documentation of the conversations I had with CPCNH. I called Ben, who I always call when I'm confused about electricity. He also helped me understand that, well, a couple things. First, that there's a big difference between what Joe gets, 2% extra money for his RECs as opposed to tens of thousands of customers in CPCNH on a scale buying RECs. Which makes, we're operating at scale and can have the RECs can put a lot of capital into renewable generation and development, as much as 20 or 30% of the projects, according to CPCNH. So it becomes a major factor. Second, the RECs are used by all kinds of organizations as a carbon offset. They count towards our carbon reduction goals in the city. as I wrote back to Joe, your $28 a month helps when operating at scale to buy up a lot of the RECs in New England and create demand. And that helps stimulate more renewable energy projects. And so I feel good about, as a Clean 100 purchaser myself, that the use, my RECs that I'm paying for are at the rate of, one REC equals a megawatt, that's investing in renewable technology throughout New England that comes back to us. So that was my explanation. But I think it made us all do a gut check and evaluate this. And because we really want to be transparent. So Ben, maybe you always state this more succinctly than I do. How do we answer Joe's question? And if other people ask Joe's question, how do we explain it? And how do we be transparent about it?
I think Mr. Calderola is onto something. I think he understands the dynamics well, that by opting up, you're paying voluntarily to buy more RECs, and that may or may not translate into additional carbon reduction. That's a fact. I think he understands that well. That said, the points that Councilor Tabler has made about adding to the demand, making a contribution to the incentives for additional renewable energy development are important. Moreover, I think it's important for us to be very clear that part of community power is building up reserve funds so that community power can eventually directly contract with new facilities, which do have a very clear and demonstrable effect on carbon emissions. And moreover, we have the opportunity to do local projects that I think longer term we do aspire as, Portsmouth Community Power to engage in that kind of direct contracting that does have a much more meaningful effect on the emissions on these systems. So I had recommended to Councilor Tabor that we try to make sure that he understands that we agree with him, that direct purchasing is better, and that that's where we intend to go to, and that, give us a little bit more time, and please be aware of the fact that, we are already doing lots of good things with community power and building up reserves to move forward towards the outcomes that he's seeking. So we're on the same team. We agree. Here's what we can do about it.
And you're also, in the minimum standard is 24 or whatever, 24.3. In terms of renewable content, right? So.
But it's going down this coming year, but yes.
But as you said, the more demand there is for renewable energy.
Right.
It creates more demand, so it makes it possible for more renewable projects to come online. So my logic is that in aggregate, the actual renewable content of the power that's flowing through the grid at any point in time is higher than 24.3, right? I mean, that's the bare minimum that for default service. But if you have customers that are opting up, right, or buying energy through competitive suppliers that has a highable renewable content, then at any point in time, and it might be all wet, at any point in time, the energy that's flowing through the New England grid is higher than 24.3 because they have to, through the purchase of RECs, they have to meet that higher renewable content.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah,
The-
not
at any-
necessarily.
At any given time, it is possible that we're above 24.3 in the middle of the night on the spring and fall days.
I guess
We take so
over a
much
period,
power from-
an aggregate over a period of time,
Yeah.
right?
I think the
It can't
point,
be lower, it has to be higher.
I think the point that I hear you trying to make is that it does provide additional demand. And I think we all agree that it does.
Right.
I just think that the effect on carbon emissions at the grid level is indirect. It's an additional push.
Mm-hmm.
But what he's seeking is if I'm gonna pay additional money for my power supply, I'd like for that additional increment to go directly into emission savings. So indirect versus direct, I think.
And we're
is-
not there yet.
No,
Yeah.
you're supporting the market. You're not
That's right.
really,
That's right.
obviously, the electrons that are flowing to your home are.
Counselor Cook.
Yeah, one of the things that I always tell people is that if we don't start driving demand, which is what we need to do, increasing demand for renewables, and that's what you do when you buy RECs, then the grid doesn't change over time. We always end up with the same 24.3% requirement or the increases as mandated by the state. But if we increase demand and we then drive up kind of this market for renewables, ultimately the cost of renewables are so much less than cost for fossil fuel generated power that companies automatically are buying more renewables and having more renewables in the mix because it benefits them to do that.
Yep.
So, and then it's not just Portsmouth that's benefiting from us buying more renewables. It's the entire grid that's benefiting. So it's towns and communities that where people can't afford to opt out
Right.
that are benefiting because the percentages go up.
Or Newmarket with all its apartments.
Exactly, exactly. So we have to be thinking really big picture here.
Yeah.
When we increase demand, we increase the amount of supply that's renewable over time.
Right, and to Ben's point, you know, the statement I got from Mark at CPCNH was, it's a goal of the coalition to enable member cities and towns to grow their contract base for renewable energy because it enables greener power to flow to customers and help stabilize cost. And he's pointing out they're starting to buy solar, they're looking at sourcing. So we're going to go down that road. As you say, the reserves are building.
Well, I think there's a lot of good points you made, and I think that the letter was really very accurate in what he's portraying. I think maybe his point too was that maybe most people are not aware that this is how that works. And so maybe some are under the misconception that if I sign up for 100% clean, I am getting green electrons, and that's coming into my home, you know? So, and that's not true, of course. So I just want to say one thing. Energy efficiency and reduction of energy use is immediate and direct carbon reduction. Guaranteed. Doesn't matter where it comes from, you reduce your usage, you reduce your carbon, period. That's the most effective and actually cheapest way of doing it. With regard to the solar RECs, I mean, anyone who's generating solar RECs from their solar panels, the RECs that you generate are actually based on real green energy that you generated on your roof. And there is the auction market, the New England auction market, where those RECs are being sold to utilities who are obligated to prove that they have so much renewable energy or so many RECs. So they could build their own renewable energy plants and that would count. But the states allow them to use RECs in place of that. And depending on what the REC market looks like and how cheap that is, they might decide, and they have decided often, to say, oh, it's cheaper to buy those RECs than to actually make renewable energy myself.
And CNH is doing the same thing.
Yeah,
They have the
well,
same
they're
requirement.
using the same platform
They have to
of
buy
RECs,
RECs.
okay?
Yep.
So what I'm saying is though that the another good way of increasing the value or generating more renewable energy is when the state ups its renewable portfolio standard, which is so low in the lowest in all of New England states. Once, if they were up that percentage, which is like 25% by 2025, I think we're already there. If they up that, now there has to be more renewable energy bought or produced because it's required.
Right.
And then the value of these RECs actually goes up because now there's demand for them. Okay. And then finally, regard to the way that the coalition uses these RECs, this is currently the best way to do it. There is a market there. There is a lot of controls over that renewable market. And it's very possible that, you know, the renewable energy that we're buying indirectly or supporting really may it be generated somewhere in Rhode Island, for example, and they put it into the grid there, or Connecticut or somewhere. And there is that amount actually going into the grid. And of course, the hope is the more that goes into the grid, the greener the grid's gonna get at some point. And of course, the best way to do it is if we could buy Joe's solar energy right here in Portsmouth. Then we could say, yeah, we're reducing carbon right here because that's renewable energy is coming from Joe's roof. And we're reducing it here in Portsmouth. Another option in the future might be to contract for offshore wind, which would also be a direct purchase of real renewable energy directly without the rec middleman, so to speak. So these are all opportunities, but it is true that right now the recs are the best options we have.
And this is one of these things where, as a member community of CPCNH, they should be putting together a very succinct kind of white paper on
Yep.
this, and not,
Yep.
not a Clifton Below, letter. that
Easy.
You do a wonderful job distilling
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But every community in the state has the same need to explain to the residents what these opt-up programs are and how it really
Yes.
works, and
Yeah.
clarify that it's not really flowing to your home, but this is why it's all wonderful. And
Yeah.
they, and if it's, whether it's that, or it's the status of the net metering issue, et cetera. And I sent a note to Henry on this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That I just think they need to focus a little bit more on these sticky wicket issues for member
Mm.
communities.
Yeah.
And do a better job of preparing nice, understandable white
Yeah.
papers that communities can use to help
Yeah.
help educate their residents, rather than, Counselor Tabor doing it, and then somebody in Dover doing it, et cetera. I think, it's a part of being a member of CPCNH. I think they could help us better with some of these communications.
And these are.
Yeah, well, I think, and I was responding to Joe's letter. I was moving at the speed of plight.
Yeah.
Because.
Yeah.
But I did want to pass these out. This is an environmental disclosure label.
Mhm.
This is a draft. So I didn't want to put it up on the screen. CPN and CNH's board has not approved it yet.
And this is for the higher rates, right?
No, this is
This
an
is the
environmental
composition.
disclosure level showing the composition of each of the
Energies,
options.
right?
Yeah, I thought they were,
Oh, the
we
composition.
should just have to do it for the default. I thought they were gonna do it for the other options. too.
Right. So, I think this gives us an answer to some extent, and they're very clear. Total content represented by renewable energy certificate purchases and system power for the balance. So they're being very.
This is a reminder too, that just I'm looking at the dates. They have the ability they don't have the requirement to purchase the RECs until like the subsequent year. Right, so here, we're in almost August of 2024.
Right.
And I think they're going back and buying the RECs for what their requirements were for 2023.
Right. Right.
So they're not buying them as they go along. It's a kind of look back.
Right. But I think this shows you for each of the options, Granite Basic, Granite Plus, Clean 50, Clean 100. Breaks it out between biomass, hydro, landfill gas, municipal solid waste, solar, wind, and then the non-renewables, coal, natural gas, nuclear. And then you see what the system mix is and the residual mix. And it took me a while to understand the residual mix is what's left after you apply all the RECs. So,
The numbers for wind are interesting. You start looking at Clean 100, the 84%.
yeah.
Block Island.
I guess, yeah.
It's not a whole lot around, so.
Yes, but we do
Pennsylvania
get
has
down
that too.
to pounds per megawatt hour for each of the options.
Yeah.
Which I think goes to the heart of Joe's question.
Right, somewhere in New England, that carbon is being reduced.
Yeah.
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 I didn't know they were, the requirement had gone down to 15.9.
Yes. New Hampshire Department of Energy. So- Oh, it's not universal.
So in the spirit of the transparency issue, that, I think was just mentioned, or Kevin just mentioned, I discovered another issue here regarding net metering for solar. In fact, I discovered that I could sign up for community power even if I had panels on my roof.
Sure.
Yeah, no one told me this before. Okay, everything that the Community Coalition puts out, it says currently we're not enrolling people with solar energy. We're waiting for a decision from Eversource with the data transfer and so forth.
Oh, they've also, Peter, have it clarified though that you may still benefit from the lower rate, even if you do export to the grid.
Yeah, I get that. That's
Yeah,
true.
So you may join and still benefit from
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm not saying you won't benefit. I'm just saying I can get credit for my solar energy right now through the community power. And the reason for that is, I have a good friend of mine from the legislature up in Plainfield, New Hampshire, who I know had solar. And I mentioned at the Solar for All event that I was looking at consulting a lawyer about legal recourse to get Eversource to move on this issue. And I'm still looking into that. And as I was looking into it, I contacted this friend of mine because I know her son was involved as a lawyer in energy issues, and her husband is as well. Her husband is one of the representatives on the board of the coalition from Plainfield. So so she tells me, oh, we're in the community coalition here in Plainfield, and I'm getting credit for all my solar. And I said, the literature I see from the coalition says currently we can't enroll you and give you credit for the solar energy you're generating until we get this resolved with Eversource. Well, that's not true, because there is something called Net Zero 1.0 and Net Zero 2.0.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
That's in the
I mean, you
FAQ.
might know this, but most people don't. I was never aware of that.
FAQs from the start.
And so the difference is if you had a solar installation before September 2017, you are able to join community power and you will get the same credits that you're currently getting on your Eversource bill for all your kilowatt generated. If you have a facility, a solar installation after September 2017, you can't do it until they resolve their issues. So that you're in solar energy net 2.0 then. So there is two classes of solar energy generators panels before September 2017, 1.0, after 2017, 2.0. And 2.0 is the issue that's being currently challenged by Eversource because they say they don't have the ability to transfer the proper data over to the community power groups. Until that happens, community power is not taking people with 2.0. But mine, and maybe somebody else's, I don't know about yours, Herb, I don't know about Betsy.
I don't have one, but Betsy.
Betsy has one, I know that, I don't know why she had it.
Post 2017,
Is it after? So she would be 2.0. But there are other people in town who've had it before 2017 who would be qualified to do that. And I verified that again from somebody else as well. And then like this flyer comes directly from the coalition. And I said, why don't you guys promote that? And Evan Oxenham, who I spoke with, he said the reason the coalition is kind of downplaying this because they feel it's kind of confusing for people, that some people can do it, some people can't. And I understand that because I think what happened when they had this hurdle with Eversource initially, I have the suspicion what happened. I can't confirm that.
It's with all the utilities, not just Eversource.
Yeah, all the utilities. Yeah, exactly. That they were hoping this thing would be resolved quicker.
Mhm.
And therefore, why throw this out now to say some people can do it, some people can't? Pretty soon, everybody can, right? And I think that's what maybe got them to say, this was always on the books with them. It was just not being publicized. And so in Plainfield, Evan Oxenham and others in the Plainfield Energy Committee there, they are publicizing it on their own to say, if you're before 2017, you can join our community power. And get credit, not just the other benefits, but get credit for the solar.
I think I heard that gentleman Byron,
Yeah.
in the library a week ago. He's had his solar installed for a number of years. And I thought I had heard him say too, that he was not able to.
Yeah. Well, that's the message. If you look at the material from the coalition, every time solar comes up, they will say, "Oh, currently we can't enroll you," or something like that.
Yeah, but the FAQ, Peter.
It's
it
in
lays
there.
out very specific
It's
detail,
in
the
there.
1.0 versus the
Yes,
2.0.
I know it does. That's what Evan,
And that you may benefit joining or not. They weren't enrolling people, but if you have any questions on whether you would benefit, they're encouraging people to call. I mean, that's
okay, so
that's
this,
been the message from day one.
well, like we saw with the Solar for All meeting there.
Well, I'm not saying the
people are not
communication
aware
is
of
not
that.
effective, but that has been the
Yeah,
communication.
Well, this is not new.
Yeah.
Had that. And this is where my friend also got this flyer from the FAQs. But what I'm saying, it was not widely publicized, and that's why in Plainfield, they're publicizing it locally to let people know you can do this. The other thing about that, when you say you can call them and ask, I tried calling them and ask. I called the customer service line, okay? And I gotta say, the people are very nice and trying to be very helpful, but they are not well-informed people. If you ask them for any specific stuff, they point you to the website. They say it's on there somewhere in the FAQs. When I say, look, I know what I'm looking for and I need some information. Can you at least tell me how do I contact somebody from the coalition who can deal with my specific issue? They say, we can't give out any numbers from anybody from the coalition. I said, yeah, but you guys are the customer service line. Where do I go? Who do I go to? I said, okay, why don't you give me the number for Henry Hearn, for example? They said, we don't know who that is. So there is a little bit of a lack there of the communications channel going to the coalition. And I know I talked to this friend in Plainfield, and they were saying, well, nobody in the coalition wants to be the number that everybody calls, right? But what they could easily do is just have a listing at the customer service of each energy community town, and at least the number of the local town clerk there or something, so that if you live in that town or nearby, you could call that number if the customer service people can't help you.
Yeah. I don't know, though, what a rep's going to tell you beyond what's on the FAQ. Because the FAQ even says, Peter, it says, can a net metered customer choose to be enrolled?
Yes.
And it says, yes, but the benefits of doing so should be calculated. And then it goes on whether you're a 1.0 or the 2.0.
Yeah, but see, even that is not enough, because the real difference between the two is that in 1.0, you get a direct credit
Right.
for each kilowatt hour, 1-to-1 on your bill, and it gets carried over to next month. 2.0, however, because the law changed in the meantime,
Right.
they break it down to 70% of this gets counted, 20% of that gets counted. You're not getting 1-to-1, okay? And this calculation is what Eversource is challenging, as far as if they can do that, and it's too complicated to do the calculation on the monthly bill. And this is what they're involved in litigating. And Harrisville filed their own claim first and then put that on ice while the coalition's thing goes forward. But even that is not quite, it doesn't quite explain it, because if they had told me, if that would say, if you're being credited for your 1-to-1 for each of your kilowatt hours right now on your bill, or were before this happened, you are 1.0.
Well, there's a call this Friday specifically about progress on net metering with Brian Callahan, the CEO.
Okay.
I think that's open access. And we'll get to more of this. In our universe, I think there's maybe 100, 120 solar customers in the city.
It's like about 140, I think, a year ago.
Right. Of whom probably the minority are pre-2017. But, and so, I mean, what we're learning is it has been in the literature and it has been addressed. Now. But how effectively it's been communicated is a good question that you raise.
I mean, that was
Should
the
be.
note I sent to Henry 2 weeks ago. I said, you know who these people are, you know.
Right.
40 in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
You know, from my background, you should have tailored outreach to those 130, 140 people on a regular basis. One, discussing the tremendous effort that CPCNH is doing to try to get this resolved.
Mhm.
And then in the meantime, remind people that you're not blacked out from.
Yes.
But there,
Good point.
you do have to evaluate your own particular circumstance and to what extent you're exporting to the grid and, you know, what's the difference in the rate?
Which is
Yeah.
not easy to do, especially the rate 2.0.
Yeah, and it's
But
more of an
you-
issue now that there's such a gap between Eversource and community power. When it was last 6 months, it was only a fraction of a cent. But now it's, you know.
Well, the thing is that
Eversource rate's higher.
that folds right into the issue of the benefit, and you need to do your own calculation, okay? So when I, up to now, and I have in the meantime made a call to enroll with community power with my solar, but prior to that, my big gripe was I have to stay with Eversource because they can't handle my solar. And all of a sudden now the rate goes up by 2 cents and I'm locked into them. I have to pay that extra 2 cents, which is $20
Yeah.
per month for me.
Yeah.
And so every solar energy generator who's before 2017 would be in the same boat as I am. And why shouldn't we let them know you don't have to be in that boat?
Right,
You can move over to community power.
Yeah.
You know, it's Counselor said, they had to make a decision early on not to slam anybody that couldn't.
Right.
Participate. So they made a decision across the board, all net
Yeah.
metered. You're
Yeah.
not going to be enrolled, but under your particular circumstances, you may still find it beneficial. And you should evaluate whether or not it still makes sense to join. You know, that was kind of the messaging early on. But the FAQ is pretty detailed.
Yeah, and I think at this call Friday, Tom Rooney will be on it as our representative, if not him, me, or both of us. And we can speak out about this and we can say, we need to communicate directly to the solar community and clarify this.
Yeah, and if they may have some issue with, because they get the emails from the utility, the email addresses for the customers.
I was just gonna
And
say,
whether or
Knowing
not they're
that-
able to use them, because those customers told the utility that they could use their email address, but I don't know if CPCNH can. But at a minimum, they should be communicating with the energy advisory committees of the respective cities and towns. So we can be, you know, we can work with the Stephanies of the world to do a nice communication to our solar customers.
right.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't do that in Portsmouth for Portsmouth residents.
Yeah.
Basically, because it's not proprietary in the sense that these people want to keep themselves secret from us.
Yeah.
They want to participate possibly, and right now some of them probably think they can't.
Yeah. And hopefully you hear from Brian where things stand from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you for raising that. Any more discussion on that? I think it's a good point.
Yeah,
Let's
just
put it in the minutes and
the one question I had is, and this is going back to what we were discussing here with. Can we be working with CP and H2? Gather more facts that and package it in a way that we could.
Yeah.
Communicate it to residents. Is that something that we should take as an action item? To follow up with them, because it shouldn't just be Portsmouth that they help put those materials together for.
Right.
And then we could somehow, I don't know whether that goes in a future mailing to
Mhm.
residents or the newsletter or all of the above. But I think that would be good to share more information about what does Clean 100 mean?
Mhm.
yeah, I know. I
And at
think
the
that's-
same time, say, let people know, just because you don't own property or you can't, for some reason, put solar panels on your roof right now, doesn't mean
Mhm.
that you can't contribute.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Well,
or if you own an
hopefully-
apartment.
Hopefully that the contest supports that education piece.
Yeah, maybe would flip to that,
Yeah,
Right.
cause it's a good follow on.
okay.
I think I sent out the draft press release. Exeter now wants to join. Which is nice. So we got two cities, Dover, Portsmouth, plus Exeter, Newport, and Durham, which are all sizable towns. And the communication is, just that we're all gonna see in this next rate period which of our towns can have the highest percentage of opt-outs. Encourage our communities to do that. And this is where the whole issue of using Rex, I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable moving ahead because we've now had a closer look at Rex and how they work. Do we think that's defensible? If we are urging people to take the opt-ups, we open ourselves to these questions. Counselor.
I think it's definitely defendable because, I mean, this is the market and this is internationally the way the market works right now.
Yeah.
For renewables. It's the only way we're gonna drive demand.
And,
Also-
I
okay.
put it into my own. I stepped into my own shoes as a clean 100 buyer. And I'm paying extra money, $28 a month, to stimulate creation of more renewable
Mhm.
energy. And I'm okay with that. Would I like green electrons coming in through my connection in the side of my house? Sure, but we're not there yet. But I did want to get everybody's gut check on this, because I think there's always the possibility that folks like Joe, who are smart, I assume all the smartest ones live in Portsmouth, but that may not be the case, will ask these questions. Gonna have to have.
The last sentence in the third paragraph is kind of gets to some of what we've been talking about. It says residents can choose these options to offset carbon in their electric usage.
So
Yeah.
there's an updated version of the press release.
Okay.
The Counselor Tabor sent out a couple of
Late
hours
today.
ago.
Oh.
So I can.
It's
put
almost
that
like
up.
carbon in the region or something, not.
We
there.
specifically
There, up there.
change that last sentence to say CPCNH buys renewable energy certificates, Rex, with those premiums referenced before to reduce member communities' carbon footprint. Let me put it on the screen.
Yeah, but that's not really accurate, I think.
Yeah, maybe we want to
It,
say.
it reduces carbon
In the region.
in the region, yes, not in in communities,
They reduce carbon emissions.
for the whole New England
Yeah,
grid.
But you can count your carbon footprint as being lower because you contribute to that. So it does reduce Portsmouth's carbon footprint. And as a community.
Okay, that's the issue right there.
Okay. If you
They're
calculate
considering those to be equivalent. And we know that they're not.
Yeah,
But from a calculation standpoint, right, they're equivalents. No,
If you say so.
exactly.
I mean,
Well,
look at this environmental disclosure.
Yeah, this is good.
If you look at the environmental characteristics as you get more and more clean energy. Your carbon dioxide goes from almost 900 pounds a megawatt hour down to 156 pounds a megawatt.
Yeah.
That reflects the implicit assumption that buying Rex is the same as reducing your carbon footprint. It's not. That's Mr. Calderola's point. And I understand that from an accounting perspective, that's very clean and convenient. In the real world, in the physical transaction sense, it is not accurate.
so what should we say that's accurate?
I don't know. I mean, if this is the accepted accounting convention. I think it's important to educate people that this is what's actually behind that. And this is what we're doing to make this claim. Not saying anyone's doing anything wrong, I just think that there could be more information out there.
Can you just say reduce carbon emissions? Because I mean, that's really what's happening. I mean, it is a reduction in carbon emissions.
The electricity
Your
content.
first version that you gave to
Yeah.
me is more in line with what Ben is saying. Which was, it was a two-part.
Renewable generation. It lowers it in the region, right? Not directly to your home.
Voluntary purchases of RECs add to the aggregate demand. That may incentivize someone to upgrade or to build a new project or whatnot. Because the price level is in the aggregate higher because of the added demand.
But those
But it's
recs are
not directly
associated.
translating to someone building a project that actually does displace
Yeah.
gas usage.
But those recs are associated with an actual megawatt, renewable megawatt that's put into the grid.
Agreed.
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
Agreed.
Yes.
And it only counts at once.
It only counts
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But whether it was an existing facility that sells RECs
Yeah.
and they're not gonna do anything different, they're already have
Right.
plenty of incentive
Right.
to flow all their power onto the grid.
Mhm.
That's not making a change in
It's
their
not incremental.
economics. The
Yeah.
incremental piece is what is
Mhm.
where
But it
the
kind of-
carbon reductions happen.
And-
But it forces the renewable content into the grid.
Right.
Right.
I think the challenges also though become when there's an increase in demand in general. So really, are you decreasing carbon? If there's an increase in demand and that demand is for renewable, but you really haven't reduced the carbon because you have more demand in general. So that's also makes this a little fuzzy.
It does. That's the general rebound effect, right?
So
Then when you get into electric vehicles and heat pumps and you're going from one sector to the other, it gets
That's a
even more
different story
complicated.
then. Yeah.
So this is what, another formulation that we had. CPCNH uses, customers can pay a bit more to choose Granite Plus, Clean 50, or Clean 100. CPCNH uses the rate premiums to buy renewable energy certificates, RECs, creating more demand for RECs on the energy market that in turn encourages more investments in renewable energy production projects.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that takes away the logic chopping
Sure.
and
Yeah.
gets us,
That's
Yeah.
thank you,
sufficiently
Stephanie.
vague and
Yeah.
accurate.
That's it. Very accurate.
So I,
Because you want to get away from the notion that the green electrons are flowing to their,
To an
Meter.
individual customer that opted out.
Yeah,
Right.
just spell it out.
Yeah.
Because it's a 2 or 3 step.
Yeah, I
So
think
let's
the
just-
environmental disclosure label, like Ben was mentioning, it's really useful to look at because the other thing is that if you look at the more clean it gets, the less natural gas we have that we're using, okay?
Mhm.
For our purposes. And also, whereas the system mix currently shows 17.18% nuclear being contributing to electricity, all of our components do not have any nuclear there.
Yeah, where's that system mix come from?
How do you mean?
Where does that 17% come from if it's not in any of these?
Well, it's the Seabrook,
Just in the system, but it's not.
Seabrook.
Yeah,
Not
well,
mine.
All of the power from both nukes has been fully subscribed.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So does that, we'll
Give me
modify
a
the
second.
press.
They-
So when we communicate this in the press release, it's gonna be a little wonkier than it, but it's more accurate.
yeah. And depending on what questions we get from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
wonky ones in town, we can get answers
Mhm.
Yeah.
for them, you know?
Yeah.
And this should incentivize us to talk more and more about reduction in energy usage because
Right.
over time, as we're warming, there's going to be increased demand in New England already for air
Mhm.
conditioning and things that we don't have demand for now. So we're not going to be driving the change that we want if we don't also reduce other usage.
No, we just got a a hybrid, plug-in hybrid,
Yeah,
and we're
right.
watching our electric demand take a 20% jump.
Mhm.
Yeah, as people put in heat pumps, which are trying to, reduce the. greenhouse
Displace the-
gases, but they're increasing electrical.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a tough, that's gonna be the tough.
And stressing our grid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and all
That-
electric charging stations we're putting.
Well, electrification is gonna stress the grid for sure, because,
I mean, yeah,
but the thing with hybrids or electrification is that, usually we're displacing a true fossil fuel, whether it's natural gas or whether it's gasoline. I mean, those are real carbon reductions as well as pollution reductions. So that's that's not electricity now, so.
So Counselor Faber, in addition to the press release, which is fantastic, are there any other activities that you feel that we should take? And is that part of, we're gonna build our own plan for the challenge? Right,
Yeah.
so that's, okay, that's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Locally.
which could include maybe an information session at the library or things such as that.
Hmm.
Okay.
And yard signs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great.
Sides.
Um. Well, I think the first order of business is to get this press release okayed by all the towns.
Setting
stuff. And so I wanted to bring that to us tonight.
Do we have a timeline for the start and the end of the challenge?
We were gonna start measuring August 1st
Okay.
with the new rates.
August 1st.
And for what duration?
Through the end of the rate period and
6 months, okay,
the end of January. Yeah,
okay.
and we'll measure opt-ups as a percentage of each town's base. One who moves the needle the most wins.
Do you envision putting this in the newsletter every week?
Yeah, Monty and I will generate graphics,
Yeah, kind of like the blood mobile.
consumer-friendly graphics.
We're a little bit bigger town than some of these others, so we have to have more people individually opt up to get those percentages.
Right.
And this is, I mean, you were envisioning doing this 2 months ago before we knew what the rates were going to be.
Now the rates
It's
are,
fortuitous that.
Yep.
The rates are helping.
Time.
So how would you interpret everything? Yes.
So this is the rate,
Stay with your.
this
utility.
12-cent rate for Clean 100 was the rate that I was paying locked in with Direct Energy before we launched Community Power.
Yeah.
That was my locked in rate. And that was for 24.3%, whatever, at the time,
Mhm.
when Eversource was at 22%. So that rate is a crazy good rate.
that's all working. That's all working. Any other discussion on the Seacoast Green Challenge?
I just noticed Lisa Sweet is in the press release because of her role with CPCNA, but not because of Rye. Is that
Correct.
intentional? Okay.
Well, I'll double check that with her.
Yes, as to whether Rye is in, but she just didn't want to be quoted, or whether Rye is not playing.
Rye is not in,
Is
but
not
she
in.
didn't say she didn't want to be.
And she's there as the vice chair of.
Of CPCNA.
She didn't want to be quoted as being the Rye representative.
But
Just
let's
that's
double
annoying.
check with her.
Is it, I heard that Lisa is one of the people who's already enrolled with her solar panels.
She is.
Community Power.
Pre 2017. Okay. The solar community conversation, Solar for All, Betsy's not here. For those of you who weren't there, you.
I would say she did a fantastic job. So hopefully she watches this. But she was wonderful, answering questions and leading that discussion.
Yeah, and it was really engaging because we had Peter with your 1.0 solar panel installation. We had Byron who leases his. We had Bill Lyons and
Yeah.
Janet Pulaski who have their own installation. We had Betsy with her installation, so we had a nice chunk of the installed base in Portsmouth to talk about their experiences. And it was very enlightening.
I missed that the date changed. I don't know how I missed that. I had 7/11 coming out of the last meeting on my calendar. Somewhere along the line, the date changed. I wandered up there on the 11th and they looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah,
Even in the minutes, it says it's on the 11th.
The first
July
one.
11th.
It's like this meeting got moved around.
I wasn't looking at my emails, I guess.
yeah, whoever, I think somebody in the sustainability committee set it up with the library and they set it up for the 10th and we were locked in and that's why we had to cancel.
We were originally gonna have a meeting.
We were originally gonna have
10th
our
to
meeting.
kind of prep for it or something. Yeah, on the 10th.
One of the things I don't know, did we record that session? I feel like we've done, well, Sustainability Committee has done a lot of these with Portsmouth Climate.
Community
Act.
conversations.
Yeah. And one of the things that might be nice to do is have some of them recorded and available on our website. So like a discussion, even if we went back and recorded someone talking about or doing the presentation and talking about it, that we could put on the website, because I think a lot of people don't realize these things happen or they're out of town and then they miss it and they're like, oh, I wish I could have attended. So it might be helpful to have links like that for presentations. And, you know, the coalition's doing presentations all the time that we could
Yeah.
also link to other presentations that
Yep.
members of the community could watch.
Absolutely.
What was the attendance? Did you get a?
Let's get 20.
Yeah.
At least 20.
Mhm.
Yeah.
On a hot summer night.
I think the challenge is we always end up with a lot of, there is a built-in audience,
Yes.
I would say, for this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we have kind of a core group that always shows up, but then you always have, you know, 5 or 6 people that don't, that are new. So that's really your audience that doesn't know very much. So
You know, I'm wondering, if we should have tried to record everybody's name and contacts if they wanted to be contacted for our solar subgroup here. you know?
There was a sign-in sheet.
Yeah, but I don't know how many people actually signed in, because I think if we had said we're trying to connect with the users or solar energy generators in Portsmouth, if you want to sign in, we will keep you abreast of what's going on. That would have been a good start to start connecting.
My neighbor just had one installed last week and they were going to be there, but then he got called out of town. But he still was interested in talking to Betsy at some point to
Yeah,
give his, because it's a brand new installation.
Yep.
He went through revision. It looks wonderful on his house. I think. Just blended in really nice on his roof.
Good.
But he was still interested in talking to Betsy at some point.
That's a lively topic in the historic district.
Yeah.
it's very
well, my
lively.
neighbor had it installed from Sunrun and he doesn't own it, you know. They own his roof now.
Yeah.
So that's a different calculation.
But I agree that we should record those if there's a way to, and you can in 11, I think. We have the capability there. Enroll meeting on the solar plant, sewer plant, sorry. Herb?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we did finally get together with NREL for the first meeting, talk about scope with partners from DPW. And I felt that it went really well. The one challenge that we have is we're seeking technical assistance from NREL, but we're not at the point where we can just say to NREL, hey, we want to install a wind turbine on Pierce Island. We need technical assistance with that. So they put together and brought to the meeting experts in a number of different areas: wind, solar, microgrids, biodigestion, you know, the list went on. They brought a whole bunch of different experts. So with Peter Rice and his staff, we talked through a bunch of different opportunities for both of the wastewater treatment plants. And then also there was some conversation that came up about Madbury too, and expanding Madbury, because Madbury is 41%, I think, during the day. Electrical covers that solar array covers those electric needs. Peter Rice asked some great questions about storage and flattening out peaks and things of that
And
nature.
resilience.
So
Yep.
what else am I missing that we covered quite a bit? We ended up going almost an hour and a half.
Sludge.
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 Oh,
What?
sludge.
Oh my God.
Fun topic of conversation.
Biosolids.
Mhm.
There was a lot of talk about biosolids and PFAS.
Pass, yeah.
Which is, one thing that Peter said is, the city is very interested in as we go forward. Energy efficient methods to deal with the biosolids and to deal with PFAS, because it's something that's unavoidable.
Mhm,
How can we do it in a more energy efficient way?
mhm.
So,
And they actually had some expertise in that area. so
yeah.
They were gonna help.
Doing some work with some communities in Massachusetts and out in California. And then, so I think that was pretty exciting for Peter Rice to know that he could reach out to these folks and
Mhm.
they could direct him to others that are working on pilot projects. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's next with them?
So next with them is they're gonna circle around and talk about what they heard from us and what they understood. There might be some opportunities to consult and help us out with. And then likewise, I'm reaching out to those that were in the meeting and asking for feedback on, what did you take away from the meeting? And so I'll connect with them, and the next step is that we'll have to settle on one or a couple areas that we want technical assistance. I imagine one that we'll probably take on is doing an assessment of wind at Pierce Island. Because this is something they have, distributed wind is something they have a lot of expertise in. And they're working with a lot of communities. And on the resiliency side, there's a lot of funding for that right now. That's getting pushed pretty hard by NREL as distributed wind. There's some things we may not need assistance from them, is maybe expanding the solar array at Madbury. If we know what we're doing, if we put out an RFP, it's probably something technically we don't really need assistance with. But on the funding side, so they did talk to us about that they know where the dollars are. And they know
Yeah,
how,
some good insight on the different grants available.
yeah, and how to go after those different dial for critical municipal infrastructure. And especially for seacoast communities for resiliency too.
Yeah.
So I think this could be the beginning of a good relationship going forward. They did mention something that I was not aware of. I think I heard them say something about 15. I'm looking at the two of you because you were in the meeting also. They work with the program that we're going through right now. They only work with 15 to 17 communities a year. I think for the C2C, if I heard them correctly, which is fantastic. If we're one of those 15 to 17 that are chosen each year.
Well, they seem very responsive.
Yeah,
They were gonna huddle with their various subject matter experts and give us sort of a menu.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What to pursue next.
And I think that,
Okay.
So just to be clear, we made a proposal, or the city made a proposal to NREL. NREL consulted with the city about the proposal, is now considering the proposal, and it's now NREL's responsibility to get back to the city on what the opportunities that they may be willing to help with may be.
Yeah, we drafted up objectives and scope and gave it to them.
Okay.
It included the 2 wastewater plants.
Yep.
And the types of things that we're interested in, increasing resiliency, reducing electrical costs.
Yep.
Producing green electricity, things like that. That's what we gave to them prior to meeting with them.
Okay.
So they understand what our objectives are, what we want to get out. The question is going to be, what are these technologies in the projects that they're recommending? Is it solar? Is it wind? Is it biogas? Is it geothermal? Is it, what are these these projects that they think would fit well within our wastewater plant.
And is there room in the capital budget for the city to engage in a project like that, or how would we pay for a project?
Well, one is, we seek to go after why the fire is hot right now, federal funding.
Sure.
And hopefully, and then I'm sure there'd have to be some capital outlay for
Yep.
some of these projects. But we would look for projects that have a short,
Payback.
yeah, short payback. Yeah, I mean, there's some of these projects, could we pay them back within 5 years or something like that? Which some federal funding might be possible.
There might be state funding too,
Yeah,
because the
absolutely.
federal government gave to the states too.
Right, some of
Yeah.
that goes,
Yeah.
it's tricky. Some is direct from the federal government, some has
Mm-hmm.
been bucket goes to the state to,
I don't know how clearly I came out, but in thinking about the opportunities, the Pease wastewater treatment plant and solar may be one of the better opportunities, because if Madbury plant is behind the grid. I don't know how much more you can add and stay behind the grid completely, but Pease doesn't have anything. So everything that you did could be behind the grid up to a point. So it might be a good first step, given where we are with solar.
It's generally 5 megawatts.
But I just don't know what the demand is at the plant. So the way they set up the panels at Madbury, if I understand it right, is they tried to get as many as they could without having to tie into the grid, so they'd stay all behind the grid and not have to lose, saving, quite a bit of savings on the solar.
Yep.
So maybe it's worth pushing for that, the solar at the wastewater treatment plant at Pease.
Yeah, let me, Kate, before you, I'll just comment on that. So something that, what's the city engineer's name?
Eric?
Eric.
Yeah.
So something Eric said in that meeting was that they have projects, expansion projects planned out at the Pease facility, and between that and the fact that some of that land is in wetlands,
They don't have space.
he,
That could be.
Eric wasn't saying no, but ground-based, he thinks might be a challenge, but roof mount, he thinks that's something. I think if I remember correctly during the meeting, his response.
yes, there was a lot of
It was a lot.
information flying around.
It was kind of exciting. I'm sorry, Kate.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna answer the question about the CIP budget, because is there room in the CIP budget? It's always a trade-off, right?
Sure.
It's always, we're always trading things, but we should probably start kind of mocking up projects that we're interested in doing so that we can at least get them placeholders in the CIP budget. Yeah.
And one other, just kind of related, we discussed at the last meeting, the landfill. I'm just wondering if it would be helpful to maybe get on Peter's calendar for like an October kind of just discussion. I think we're doing energy efficiency at September, maybe if that is something we wanted to have a little more discussion around the landfill opportunities.
I think that
Just to get
always,
some more, balls in the air.
I think that's.
I wanted to bring that up tonight at the end of the meeting for a new business. Because Clean Energy said that they'd be happy to partner with us to start doing some research. Because I think the runway for Jones Ave is long.
Mhm.
And if we don't get started, and so I don't know if we put together an exploratory,
Mhm.
subgroup,
Mhm.
out of this group here, where we start pulling on those threads and reach in. There's a lot of, municipalities in New Hampshire that have
They're
put
doing it already.
unclosed landfills. And I know the legislation is always changing and
Mhm.
regulations are always changing, but I think that could be something really valuable. And of course, we'd be partnering with DPW.
Yeah.
On starting to do that research, because they're pretty familiar with these past number of years. They've been watching that as an opportunity too.
And Clean Energy NH has been involved with several Exeter's. There's another, which other? Is it Concord? No.
Yeah, Katrine is
Manchester.
Manchester. Yeah, Hook said, I think is starting to work on a
Yeah.
project. There's a handful.
Yep.
And Katrine from Clean Energy, I think she'd be happy to. She said when she was here, that she'd be happy to work with us.
I think there's also another immediate question of the paving the high school parking lot, and can we look at putting solar over that parking lot?
Yep.
And some of the challenges around that are oddly enough just internal budgeting challenges in the way the city handles budgeting,
Hmm.
because the school's budget is separate from the city's budget. And when that has to be part of the school's capital expenditures, and the school is not going to prioritize that over teacher salaries or,
Yeah.
you know, so it will necessitate a discussion at the city level about how we handle budgeting on clean energy. If we want the schools to have solar, more solar, but they don't have the capital budget to invest, you know, how do we separate out that budgeting process?
Maybe
I
they
think
need,
those are all good ones. And
even whatever happens with the police station, is there opportunities there to kind of have a
Peter
Right.
Rice said that whatever the city does do, they'll make sure that the rooftop can accept solar. So he said that's being built into the requirements.
Uh,
so we've got a work group now for solar. I agree that Jones Avenue, the sooner we start, the sooner we get going down that long railroad track. And Counselor, that should be part of a CIP discussion too, probably.
Yes.
just to add to Kate's comments, maybe long-term, we need to look at whether or not the city as a whole has some kind of separate funding for solar or energy efficiency programs, no matter where they are. That way, nobody feels the burden alone of doing something and others benefit. Okay,
Right.
so.
Right.
Well, these projects can pay for their own bonding. In
Mhm.
many cases. So, you know, for this budget, the solar project at the high school parking lot just didn't get enough analysis. Nobody looked at the potential payback and how well it could work. So, to your point, Peter, you're right. There should be, I don't know, some carve out in the CIP for energy efficiency and energy cost reduction. And
Mhm.
it's an interesting council question.
Yeah,
And we're having a CIP work session in August.
Yeah.
So
It's 19.
mhm.
August 19th.
Is
Thank-
Peter budget for it now? I mean, he's coming in September to talk about energy efficiency projects in city buildings. So does he have a line item in his
Mostly
But-
out of operating, I think,
operating? Yeah.
as opposed to capital. But I imagine there's some,
Mhm.
the Pierce Island sewer plant is a very energy intensive. $95 million sewer plant. So I think there's, whatever we can do there is gonna be beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ben, to your question, what we proposed out of this committee to the council was to do a feasibility study of renewable energy at the sewer plants. And that was voted. And so this was the first meeting, say, how would we do that? And what's the menu of options? They're gonna come back with. And if I'm not mistaken, Peter, did I hear this right? That the sludge treatment in the California city, Windsor it was, up north of Santa Rosa, uses, to get rid of PFAS, you need to get super high temperatures. And I thought that I was hearing that this treatment generated its own energy out of biogas to do that. I might have heard that wrong, but I think that's when everybody's brains started.
Yeah, destructive technology. That's
Right.
what the whole new thing with PFAS now. It's not to take it out with carbon, but to destroy it. Break the molecule into something different.
For which you need like
How,
700
Heat,
degrees.
temperature.
So
A solar beam focused on it.
that excited, I sense some excitement on Peter Rice's part.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah, because that's gonna be a challenge for all these wastewater treatment plants, because they have that effluent that they have to treat after they treat it. After they've already spent the money in a $95 million plant to treat it. Then they gotta treat it for PFAS.
yeah, PFAS.
Yeah, and I think that's how Enreal's getting involved in all this, because some of these solutions just require a mass amount of energy. And, you know, like they were talking about, how do you, that energy, can you produce that through, you know, biogas? And you're not, you're not necessarily using, you know, using more energy
Mhm.
because of some of these processes, but you're not having to buy that energy because some of that can be produced
You're
on
creating it.
site.
But that biogas creation creates the byproduct that still has PFAS in it that has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, these are exciting opportunities.
Yeah. So, and not to push on this, but we have had a few conversations on Jones Ave. What does everybody think we should do to maybe start dipping our toe deeper into that pool?
So the one thing about Jones Ave is before you can do anything on top of Jones Ave, the state has to authorize that as a site where you could do something more than a closed sort of cap landfill.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of work there to get it to that point.
And how do we do that?
Consider anything else.
I don't,
They had a working group. I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Came up with a report, and in that report, it talks a little bit about those next steps. I can't remember exactly what they were. but
is this the
basically,
Department of Environmental Services or?
Probably be going back to DES, say, what would it take to make this site, you know?
Who'd like to
Closed.
do some study on that?
I could try to find out some.
I'm happy to help out, but with taking point on the NREL side, I
Yeah,
don't wanna
Extend
extend myself, but I'm happy to participate.
I'm happy to get involved. I mean, I don't have a particular background in there, but
I'd say the place to start is that report that the Jones Avenue, the Jones Ave land. And it should be on our website. I can find it.
And also think engaging with Katrine and Clean Energy,
Mhm.
you know, they offered to
He's got the roadmap.
jump in and help out, and they've been working with a number of other communities. Not similar solution with landfills.
Right.
Mhm.
So
it was the work, that report that was done, was that through the DPW or who was?
It was like
championing
a
that?
city council subcommittee.
Oh.
David Moore was the staff person who worked on it. He's the town administrator in Stratham now, but he was the community development director at the time.
It's like on the DES website somewhere too.
So Kevin, you and Herb and Peter,
Yeah.
you guys can do a little study on it for our September meeting. See what you find in the. What's,
Please let me know when you wanna sync up. I'll
great.
make myself available.
Okay.
No.
And if you guys want, I can just open the door, because I've worked with Katrine a bit in the past, so I'll just, if you guys are okay, I'll just kick off an email to her with the
Sure.
two of you, and we'll just open the door
Mm-hmm.
and let her come to us, which I'm sure
Yeah.
she will.
Oh,
She's pretty aggressive, yeah, which is a good thing.
She's great.
Yeah.
All right, any other old business? Do we have anybody on Zoom for public comment? You're not. Okay. With that? Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Good meeting.
If anybody wants to take any of these cards, go ahead. We have a whole stack there.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, and 4, class 4.
Yeah.
There, class 3 is just